A clip of Fazbear fur. A plastic feather from a toy's tuft. A broken shard of painted porcelain. All brewed in a base of a sad man's magic tears. Then pour into a mold and dunk directly into a pot of fresh Fazgoo. Behold, the hottest of takes. Volume 3. So yeah, we're back again with another hot take video, and with that lengthy intro out of the way, let's get right into it. Atlas from Portal 2 writes, oh well, this is an honor. The Atlas writes, why do people think Burntrap's skull is a random kid from the books? I'm repeating that from another video, sorry if I didn't get in, but I tried. Oh yeah, this. I call this the Burntrap Dog Debacle. So in one of the last Mimic epilogues of Tales from the Pizzaplex, a teenage girl is being stalked by the Mimic and climbs into a dog suit. A dog. Mimic then inserts himself into the suit and into her, somehow, with the gory suit on him. Now this scene spread around as the creation of Burntrap, in the beginning not mentioning that it was a dog and instead being like, aha, yes, this skull is a random girl's. Except for one problem. By the next epilogue, which is virtually immediately afterwards, Mimic gets back out of the suit, dusts himself off, and by the end of the books he is inside of a jester costume where he is spring-locked inside. Which means, canonically, Mimic should be a jester right now. That also means this wasn't the creation of Burntrap, but a theory concocted through book leaks. You might notice that a lot of people discuss the Mimic epilogue stories, but not the ending, not how they ended. And that's because of all the epilogue parts, that ending, Mimic trapped in a basement in an unknown jester suit, is perhaps the most detached from the games and doesn't support the books explain everything theories. Well, we just got straight into the salt with that one, folks. Brace yourselves. Obey Bunny writes, here's a hot take. Ruin DLC is overrated. Security Breach's storyline was much better. The villains were much better. The only thing I like about it better is Cassie. So here's the thing. Yes, I think that Ruin is a bit overrated. I played it, I didn't have much fun with it, but technically acknowledge how it improves on the formula. So, kinda. Now, I don't know about the storyline and villain thing. That's not exactly a potatoes to potatoes comparison. I might not like the Mimic, but Vanny was not there at all. And as for the story, Ruin's story is pretty, but Security Breach's story just, stops. If Security Breach was complete and had the cut elements in it, then yes, I feel like the story would have been way better than Ruin's. But elsewise, it's like a person-to-person comparison thing, you know? King Kingo writes, I only watched Help Wanted 2, but it doesn't hold a candle compared to the first one. At best, it is pretty good. At worst, the games just aren't as interesting, are just more mundane minigames like Simon says, but if you fail, you get a jump scare. Also, it isn't as scary, but it makes up for that with charm. I disagree. So, Help Wanted 1 is mostly just remakes of the old games, and that's great if you're into that, I can see that. But my favorite parts of Help Wanted 1 were the repair sections and those minigames. From what of those I was able to play before I had to return my game. Stuff that's fun and new. Not just FNAF, except the mouse has to move way further and my controller has automatic look spring. So in my opinion, I think Help Wanted 2 went in the right direction, putting these fun minigames out instead of remaking Pizza Simulator. Because let's be frank, it doesn't matter how immersive Pizza Simulator's office is, those nights would have been dull as drying paint. And as for the scare factor, I'm not a good measure of that, because I don't find a lot of scary things scary. The only thing I got spooked at recently was in Help Wanted, yes, but it wasn't an intended scare, I don't think. It was what I think might have been a glitch, where Circus Baby hangs out at the door a little too long. But looking at it closely, I don't really see how Help Wanted is scarier since all of the jump scares are kind of familiar too. Again, it's the old FNAF games. And that's not saying that Help Wanted is bad. But that is saying that if I wanted to play FNAF 1 to 3 again, I could do that elsewhere. Give me Freddy Diner Dash any day. I'd eat that up like Faz-tatoes and fries. Professor Sirlo John writes, "What I honestly think is that the fandom needs to cut all previous theories and start from the top and go back down again. We're in so deep now that there's just no way to tell just how far off the mark we might be. We're living in a house with a foundation of sand, and every time new information comes out, that foundation is swept away. It indicates to me that maybe we're making assumptions due to misunderstandings nearly a decade old. As an example, a video I watched a few weeks ago talks about how FNAF 1 should take place in 1995, not 97, and people simply assume 97 because Matpat said so years ago, and he only said it because it vaguely fit the time frame and because it was the date of the in-real-life murders. Oh my god, he was trying to tie it to. A quick note here, but I know Matpat's leaving game theory. I wish him the best of luck. I think it's great that he's going to seize his life and spend time with his family, and I respect him for getting to the point where he can do that. He's a cool dude. So if I say anything critical about Matpat's theorizing, know that it's not like from a place of gleefully pouncing now that he's leaving YouTube. It really is just weird to see him go, and I'm hoping that he gets to grab those opportunities that he could easily miss, keeping his nose to the grindstone, seizing the day and all. That being said, connecting FNAF to in-real-life murders, that one didn't age so well. Continuing. Switching the date fixes so many issues with other dates in the franchise, such as FNAF 3 and the security logbook. If something as simple as FNAF 1's date is wrong due to years-old misconception, what else has been wrong? We're this far in and we still have no idea what some of the most foundational and potentially essential parts of the franchise are. See, this is the problem with only following popular theories and not trying to read the material for yourself. So many people have told me things like Ballora is Mrs. Afton, Mangle in the Bite of 87, Toy Chica did the Bite of 87, and these are just popular headcanons, not the real stuff. Yet they are taken as plot points. I mentioned this in another video, but I had a few comments correcting me that the phone guy was talking about the Bite of 83, not the Bite of 87, even though the phone guy blatantly says the Bite of 87. That just goes to show how far you can get wrapped up in the tiny threads so much that you don't see what the tapestry spells out, you know? Monty did it. Lezo Zepton writes, "Okay, here we go. Number 1. The Mimic is overly hated and William shouldn't have come back. This man was looking like he was about to crumble in security breach. Admittedly, the Mimic did just phase into reality, but so did Gregory. Most people thought we'd play as Vanessa. Yes and no. Yes, William shouldn't have come back. No, Mimic is appropriately disliked. In fact, I see a lot of folks really liking him, and frankly, he kinda comes off, slapdash villain for me. I just don't like how he's virtually Afton but not Afton, so you can have your cake and eat it too. We have a new villain, but he's kind of the old one. 2. Glamrock Bonnie is overhated design-wise. I get it, it's not what the fans expected, but like you said, it was overhyped. Totally agree. I think Glamrock Bonnie is really cute. I even have a half reaction to the first time I saw him. I feel like I might be inching towards a really, really stupid twist, but, I don't know. Oh, Bonnie. I definitely think the pushback is because so many fans got attached to this other design and it was a jarring change. And that's fine, but I like how Bonnie feels very cutesy and 80s. Little headband and hair tuft. And he and Freddy have matching earrings. Adorable. 3. Finally, Glamrock Fronnie is overhated. The idea of gay robots is so spooky that it scares half of the community. Yes, I like Glamrock Bonnie a lot. I say this with absolutely no self-reflection of my own. I feel like a lot of people who have this problem with shipping are repeating phrases that they heard from a YouTube video, because they always say the exact same things. Like, why should it bother you if people ship couples? What does it do other than help expand the fandom? Let people have fun? What, because they're not adhering to your beliefs for your franchise? A couple of flaky ice chips if I've ever seen them, but moving on. Knockoff Barbie writes, Steelwool needs to explain what the hell is going on with things like the Blob and Tangle that have been possibly retconned, but at the same time they randomly appear. I understand that the Blob is probably canon at this point, but it would be nice to have some sort of explanation for what on earth is going on. Also, the Tangle is a terrible name for it. I agree. Also, I would have called it the Ensnared, reference to Innard, but also to snaring and trapping of parts, and to itself being a snare who traps others. Plus, it's more cryptic than Blob and doesn't reuse another FNAF character's name like Tangle. And yeah, the Blob kind of feels like a Chekhov's gun that wasn't fired. You know, the old saying that when you bring a gun into the situation, like in a book or a movie, it's gonna get used. Blob's a Chekhov's gun with no bullets. It's there, and it feels like we're gearing up to use it, but recently I'm becoming less certain that this thing's gonna come out and play. Penguin writes, Please read my hot takes, I'm subscribed. Here we go. Hot take number 1. FNAF 6 shouldn't have happened because it brought back Springtrap without any build-up, didn't let Innard and sister locations stand alone, made Circus Baby stupid, had the worst office gameplay, and introduced book characters nobody knows in them. Oh yeah, I pretty much said the exact same thing in my Pizzeria Simulator video. Not that it shouldn't exist, but many of the issues you named I had. The only thing I disagree with is the Springtrap point, because technically his return was teased in FNAF 3 and more directly in Sister Location. Though there was no indication that he was going to come back looking like this. 2. FNAF peaked in Ultimate Custom Night. If we're talking about the old gameplay, the Office point-and-click gameplay, then I would agree, because there was a lot of characters and a lot of replayability, so yeah, it did work. But, again, kind of agree only if you mean Office gameplay. 3. The Vanny Maskin's ruin is stupid, and it's worse if the Tales of the Pizzaplex books are game canon, because that means Fazgoo and Lonely Freddy's are canon, and if Fazbear Frights is canon to the Pizzaplex books, it gets so much worse because of Eleanor. So here's the problem if the books became canon to the games. The books break laws established in the games, and I don't mean like, obviously I don't mean like laws like breaking the law, go to jail. I mean laws like the laws that the world establishes. The way the games function and the way the books function are very different. There's such of a magical property into the books where basically anything can happen. It's very much like Goosebumps, while the games are more kind of, most things have like a realistic explanation, or like at least one that fits in with the supernatural themes. Take for example, Innard scoops Michael, but Michael doesn't die because he possesses his own body. This sort of makes sense because Michael is turned into a suit, and as established, suits can be possessed. So, it's a little bit of a stretch, it's still kind of a jumping the shark moment, but there's sort of a cause and effect through line. It's not like, I don't know, some kid randomly turns into a bunch of sea bunnies because he accidentally drinks water with them in it, or that the Pizzaplex is selling super expensive but cheap for the consumer nanobots that fly around and are invisible and carve tattoos into your skin and may very well have been inspired by Outlast. But I digress. Correction, they are not selling them. Maybe, they just have them on display wrapping gifts. I think a resounding what is still earned. Plus, if Remnant in the games is retconned to work the same way as the books, the games will effectively lose any stakes. In the games and novel trilogy, Remnant is a metal made to hold souls in it. In the books, it is a powerful substance capable of regrowing flesh, stopping death, and bringing the inanimate to life with no souls required. Really. It is the nectar of the gods, or the MacGuffin muffin if you want my opinion. It's the little crutch that writers use to erase all outcomes and rewrite new ones, regardless if they make any sense. So yeah, dirty pool, mister, dirty pool. Plus, erasing death in a franchise about the repercussions of people being murdered would be a bad call. Death is the one thing you should fear. If you erase it from the equation, Well, what's the point of constantly bellyaching about the deaths of the children? We could probably use Remnant and illusion discs to bring them virtually back to life in bodies so much like humans that nobody would notice the difference. Yeah, that's an issue. 4. About my first hot take. Help Wanted and Help Wanted 2 are fine. Security Breach would be fine if it had another 6 months of development time, and Fnaf 1 to 6 should get VR remasters. Mostly agree, except with the last point. Fnaf 1, 2, 3, and most of 4 got VR remakes and Help Wanted. Help Wanted 2 basically covered the good parts of Sister Location, and Pizzeria Simulator in VR would still be a dull little romp. Remember, no cameras, not much to do. To remake all these games in VR again feels kind of like a waste of time to me. Well, especially for me, someone who A, can't play VR due to motion sickness, and B, even if I didn't get it, wouldn't be spending hundreds of dollars on a headset with less than a handful of games that interest me. So, yeah, yet everything else. No to the VR remakes. We've already got them. Number 5. I want FNAF to move quickly again. In FNAF 1 to 4, there were 30 years-ish between them, but Help Wanted was a prequel to Security Breach, Ruin happened a bit after Security Breach, and Help Wanted 2 happens during Ruin. When you compare those, you see a difference. I agree, but not in a time scope. I don't want us jumping 30 years every game, or we will have those issues of still working on stuff from 60 years ago that we kind of have now. The issue in the last 4 games isn't time. It's that there's not really much happening in the story. Help Wanted introduces Vanny and Glitchtrap. Security Breach introduces Gregory and Vanessa is possibly freed. Ruin introduces Mimic, and Gregory returns briefly, kind of. Cassie is introduced. And Help Wanted 2 tells us about possibly Cassie's dad, and Vanny returns. It sounds like a lot, but considering that it's over 4 games, this is very, very little. There's just not a lot happening, and the stuff that is actually happening is happening between the games where we're not seeing it. Withered Bonnie is the best animatronic because of his character and his face puns and the J. Jim's interview series. Yeah, he's pretty cool. He's not my favorite, but I could see how he could be someone's favorite. Number 7, Glitchtrap can go die in a ditch. He is somehow still relevant, but is just an excuse to bring back Springtrap. He was good in Help Wanted, but he has just declined from then. Yeah, I kind of agree. So, a long time ago, I made a video talking about William Afton, and I got to the Glitchtrap section, and I talked about how I thought Glitchtrap was such a great new opportunity to moving the story, and I thought he was a good next step for the Afton brand. And after Help Wanted 2, I don't feel like that anymore. I've seen Glitchtrap do the same stuff in Help Wanted 2 that he did in Help Wanted 1. I'm just kind of over it. I'm kind of ready for him to just move aside so we can have another villain step up for a game before we bring back Glitchtrap again. 8. Vanessa needs an actual character that isn't just Glitchtrap mind control. Yeah, because if we're going on Security Breach's character, if that's not just Glitchtrap mind control, Vanessa's a major... She's very cruel, she's cold, she's bitter, and she treats animatronics who are as intelligent as humans like dirt because she feels superior towards them. And we'll say that's because Glitchtrap, but I don't know how much of that is Vanessa, how much of that is Glitchtrap. We'll never know. 9. Moon is used so much in Help Wanted 2 because he is the only scary one. I mean, he is very scary. I think the reason Moon is used so much in Help Wanted 2 is because he's one of the few animatronics that can move a lot. Like, he can be on the roof. He can be on the carousel. He can pop up from behind a desk. When you put him in a section, he's really easy to move around. Some of the other FNAF characters are not as easy to move as him. 10. You are an amazing creator. I love your videos. If you feel burnt out, don't be afraid to take a break. Thank you. It's It's kind of weird still getting compliments. Sometimes I get them and I don't really know how to respond to them, if that makes any sense. But I really do appreciate the comments, and I do really thank you. And don't worry about me. If I did get too burnt out, probably what I would do is I would switch from whatever video I'm working on to one that doesn't burn me out as much. So I've got it under control for now. P.S. Where is Prototype Freddy in Help Wanted 2? Good question. To be realistically honest, so Faz Friends did a video where they looked at Freddy's model and he didn't have the prototype on the foot. And it could be that's not the prototype, but I think it's more likely because you're not actually supposed to be seeing his feet at all, that they just didn't model it in. So he could be the prototype, he might not be the prototype. Maybe there was such a discourse from it that they just decided to let it drop. We might figure it out sometime, or maybe it'll be one of those mysteries that's never solved. Sorry, there's so much that I came back again and added more and more. If you actually read this and reply, thanks so much, you are amazing. Please put it in your video. Already done. Mason Law 3520 writes, it would have been cool if Mxes was themed as a puppet variant, sort of have it be an extension of the puppet's origin as a security animatronic, and I think we've had more than enough rabbit-themed antagonists for this series. I agree. In fact, I'll get back to this one later. Alchemist Ghost writes, Gregory is one of my favorite characters in the entire series, and it makes me kind of sad that we don't have a lot of merch for the human characters. I've seen some Vanny and Vanessas and some purple guys, and that's kind of it. I get that for a lot of people the main draw is the animatronics, but there's a lot of folks who love the human characters too, and I wish there was merch of the few human characters we have. Seriously, even if it's just like one of those mystery bag keychain figures, I just want merch of my son. Also, I wish there had been more with Glamrock Bonnie. Bonnie in general is my favorite animatronic, and I'm sad he really hasn't had a major role and appearance in the series for a while. I agree to both of those. I find it a little odd that there hasn't been any Gregory merch or Cassie merch. I mean, recently I saw a pin that's Gregory and Cassie. It's on YouTube's. But yeah, Vanessa has gotten a few pieces, and she's gotten a few cool pieces, those little snap figures. There's a Vanny snap figure where you snap the face off, and it's Vanessa underneath. But it is kind of odd they never did that for Gregory. Or Cassie, I mean, just for the sake of making more merch, they love making merch. So, I don't know, it's kind of odd. And yeah, I definitely think Glamrock Bonnie at least deserved some voice lines, but I digress. Sarah Tassar L writes, oh, I probably butchered that one. I'm a little late to comment, and you probably won't see this, but if you do a FNAF Hot Takes Part 3, I've got one. The original FNAF story, games 1 to 4, would be better if the Afton family was shown to be actually nice, William was a good father. He would make the story so much more tragic, showing a happy family, tipped over the edge by a freak accident. This is probably a really hot take. It's not too hot of a take because there are still people who believe the headcanon that William was really a good father and just had an incidental child death and then became evil, even though that's not the case. But if that was the case, I kind of disagree. See, I feel like giving a serial child murderer a tragic backstory is one of those decisions that can really come back to haunt you. And that's what it would boil down to. Not a tragedy, but a defense for Afton. It's not his fault. He was just pushed to this. Yeah, nah, that wouldn't fly very well. Now, let's say Henry was another villain. Someone affected by William killing his child by going mad and making experimental animatronics which end up killing people. There it works, because Henry's a little more detached from his crimes, Instead of my child died and thus I killed other children, it's my child was murdered, and because of that, I created machines that were dangerous, not intentionally making them for murder, but they murdered folks. That being said, again, you technically could have had William be a good father, have none of William's children be abused or killed, and him still being just a murderer. Because a lot of well-known serial killers have actually had families who are none the wiser to their crimes. So that could have actually maybe worked. Reject 187623 writes, sort of a take. I fully support and understand Scott's decision to never open a real Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I believe he said the reason for this was because he was scared it could inspire a real psycho to recreate the events of the games. Kids go missing and are stuffed into animatronic suits in fiction, and that's fine, it makes a good horror story. If it happens in real life, no, just no. I agree, and yes, that could be an issue. And I could see why Scott would think that, yes, but more realistically, there's a bigger issue with opening a Freddy's. Okay, nothing is bigger than murder, obviously, but I mean there's a more practical reason why you couldn't just open a Freddy's. And that is the amount of money it would take, the amount of technology it would take, and the amount of support it would take to just open one business would likely not pay for itself. It wouldn't be like Disney World, it would be a single restaurant, and it would make money, but the cost it would take to make it all work wouldn't make any profit. Making realistic animatronics would be hard enough. They were worn suits in the movie. Making that into a functional animatronic, which are not full robots by the way, they are usually air hoses and smoke and mirrors, it would be, like an endeavor like that can and has bankrupt many in the past. People have gone bankrupt building houses, let alone a restaurant, and then you have to manage it because if it slips up, your brand is affected. Like the Garfield pizza place. Now, I only barely remember this, and there's a video that talks about this, but there was a place that branded itself with Garfield and made food like pizza and lasagna. I think they delivered, and the place ended up slacking on the food. It was cheap, poor quality, and they were relying on the brand alone. That could happen with a Fnaf place. Before you say, Scott wouldn't let that happen. Unless Scott was fully involved with the business, he wouldn't be able to micromanage that. Trust me, even the people who are managing there can't micromanage that. That would be a huge commitment, and it's in a field completely different from what Fnaf is. Five Nights at Freddy's is a media series that involves a restaurant. Making a restaurant based after that would be a huge undertaking. Unless you get Guy Fieri backing it, it won't go too well. Though I guess you do have to worry about people taking it too far, yes. But I think less copycat killers and more Rick and Morty Szechuan meme disasters. While editing this video, I was actually able to source a direct quote from Scott on the matter, and it turns out I wasn't too far off in my assumption. He said, and I quote, "I've actually been asked this a lot, but the answer is simple. I do not want to be in the food service industry. There is a lot more involved with restaurant management than just putting together a few killer robots." Vincent Morris writes, "I once had a bunch for part 2, but here are a couple I got for here. Hope I get in. With how Glamrock Bonnie looks in Ruin vs. Freddy in Space 3, I've been suspecting Scott had no involvement with Ruin. Not to mention the questionability on communication between Tales authors and Steel Wool, as they pretty much just share a mimic. So, Glamrock Bonnie was probably just a nod to the fan design, but who knows. It is odd, but it could just be that. Also, while I recently heard that the Aftons weren't originally intended to be British, via Bonk Boy, if Scott didn't have a name for Afton's daughter during Sister Location, how crazy would it be if she was just named Elizabeth because of the Queen? Bobby Dots even seem to use that. I mean, that definitely could be. Elizabeth is a pretty common English-sounding name, and I say that with the full knowledge that is also used plenty here in America. More so, it did seem to be pretty popular around the time Sister Location came out. I can remember a few Elizabeths in games around that time, so it could be that too. Could be the Queen, could be because William and Elizabeth share a similar sound, and of course, it is a biblical name as well, so that could also play a part. Frankly though, I do find it weird that the Bobby Dots reused the name and gave a completely different reason for using it. Then again, I partially believe that Eleanor's name might have been a mistake and it was supposed to be Elizabeth, as originally she was a one-time villain before replacing Afton. Who knows? The long and short of this is, I don't know. But good theory though. QCow writes, "There shouldn't be a Five Nights at Fredbear's game or something like that. They should keep that era of story as, before the bad things happened era. If they want to do it, maybe it's a recreation of the location and animatronics, but definitely not the 1983 game." I agree. See, there is a lot of folks discussing how much they want a prequel, a Five Nights at Fredbear's Family Diner game. But I don't think they realize what they're going to get if we get one. We will likely not see William or Henry, maybe get an audio log from each if lucky. Our animatronics are limited, and we've already seen them, and it'll likely end with the climactic shock of, Charlie was taken, ooh, it's the original murder. Well, unless the Help Wanted 2 death alignment hint is correct. I think folks want answers that they've already gotten, and a game about William's first murder, after we've gotten so much about William's original murders, would be majorly redundant. Five Nights at Fredbear's would just be a tale we've already heard about at a place dead to us. If you really want Fredbear's in its prime, there's plenty of fan games, like Final Nights 4, I think, that do a great job capturing it without wasting valuable time and resources going back to the past. 2. The Fredbear bite should have been the bite of 87, not 83. I mean, the incident where somebody got accidentally bit by an animatronic should be significant, not a reoccurrent thing. Bite of 87, more like the retcon of 2015, am I right? Yeah, there's like no reason we have two identical bites. Like, streamline that. One bite. Don't fabricate a second bite so you can have it line up with the dates in the books. Withered Chica is still the creepiest animatronic. I think she is still very creepy. Those eyes and that mouth are just, oof, they're rough. She's awful. I love it. Chandelier-chan writes, while the story is somewhat convoluted, I honestly think no conclusion to the story will fully satisfy the community. There are such large varieties of beliefs and theories within this community that people can see completely different things in simple things. I believe this is especially true after looking at Scott's troll post about the book's canonicity. So, do you remember that popular line from The Incredibles? And when everyone's super, no one will be. So like, when you don't give any conclusions, no one will get any conclusions. That did sound a lot better in my head, but point is, no answer will please everybody, but no answer will please nobody. No matter what story you tell, there's no possible way to make everybody happy. In fact, trying to pander to making the largest swaths of people happy can and will get in the way of actual storytelling, because sometimes people might not know what they truly want until they get something and like it. But when you're too afraid to give any conclusions, you just damage your story, because details with no cohesion and build-up with no payoff do not a satisfying experience make. And you know what? Maybe there wouldn't be so much story discourse if we could occasionally get something we could all react to and experience together without having to think it'll be retconned or it's a metaphor or so on and so forth. Bendy did this well. Bendy and the Ink Machine ended in a soggy mess of a confusing story and learned. And when Dark Revival came out, it decided to do a much more direct story. It answered questions, it established laws to the world and characters, and now it has a much more stable foundation for future stories. Heck, we already have a hunch for our next villain, and through clues in Dark Revival, we already know they may be a much different kind of threat, one more difficult for our cast to tackle. Bendy took a step in the right direction. FNAF's still trying to figure out which villain will actually show up in the next game. Then Sane writes, I'm not sure if this could be considered a hot take, but I do want to say it. I honestly like how theory-based the FNAF storyline is. It allows people to be creative and make up their own lore and stories, enabling them to piece together in their own way. Just the context of AUs intrigues me, and the idea that everyone who is into FNAF has their perception and interpretation of the story is cool. The problem is when people take interpretations and theories as canon. This is why I'm okay with theories like Gregbot and Glam Mike, because they're pretty darn interesting topics and ideas that, if incorporated into a context that, let's say, wasn't FNAF, would be interesting. Yes, I don't believe in them canon-wise, but there's a lot of things that are just not canon that we all selectively choose. I feel like the true problem is not the theories themselves, but rather the people who take theories as canon just because of the two pieces of evidence that back them up. If they were interpreted as a fan interpretation alone instead of trying to guess the impossible canon, I feel like it could open up a plethora of individuality, creativity, and expression. I absolutely agree, and if I might add, the policing is especially frustrating. So recently, and this might have been a longer problem that I only just noticed recently, folks have sort of latched on to popular theories or beliefs, and that's great, and then they make sure to parade those beliefs around to basically shoot other theories down, which is not great. And no, I don't mean with me. I mean, I've had comments say they've basically been bombarded because they disagreed with, like, a Matpat theory. Imagine that. Imagine taking the chance to put in an idea you have out there that you like and having a dozen people chime up and say, no, that's all wrong. This, and this isn't right, even though they're factually wrong. The issue with FNAF's community and theorizing is that there's some people who get a little too emotionally attached with a theory, usually one that becomes popular in the fandom, and feel invalidated when anyone disagrees. Plus, and I'm not saying this is a Matpat problem, I think he's a cool dude, I respect him for what he's done, I think he's taking a bold and impressive grab for control of his life by stepping away and going to seize the day. But Matpat's ultimate timeline is one of the worst things to happen to this fandom, because there are parts of it that are just wrong. Stuff he added that are just not real, like anything about Afton's wife. But it was positioned like this was a real story. You've got YouTubers reacting to this and fans accepting it as a tale as old as time, when in reality it's as factual in places as my Glamrock Bonnie boss battle video. There's stories to fill in gaps, but they're not actually in the story. Matpat made this timeline to come up with a cohesive story, and I salute him for that. But that's not the story of FNAF, and it confuses folks who can't separate entertainment from what is really being shown. Which is why a chunk of the fandom repeatedly refuses any answers whenever we get them. Like with Monty. Master Squeak writes, I'm tired of people acting like the Marionette is a pure good character. It kills innocent night guards and Fazbear franchisees. Just because it's intended to help the children does not automatically make everything it does good. Ironically enough, that could also stand for Henry. While I agree that sometimes things are narrowed down to black and white, Gregory hurt the characters I like, so he's pure evil. Vanessa was possessed to some unknown degree, so she's totally good now and was innocent the whole time. This is strictly a story problem. The books clarify that the spirits possessing the animatronics, except for some of them, aren't entirely aware of what's going on. They lash out because they are afraid or tricked, or what have you. So the books make them out as victims. Then Pizzeria Simulator directly has the Marionette placed as a martyr by Henry framing them as the selfless protector. Even Fazbear Frights portrays a puppet as willing to assist those fighting Afton, and in the cut decanonized book, willing to go docile when all of their chickens are together. And there's not much we have to discredit this because we simply don't see enough of the puppet's in-character building to recognize it beyond the protector it is labeled as. That's not to say that the puppet isn't a gray character. It's that FNAF kind of doesn't do gray characters, and when it does, they're quickly fit into a box where they aren't gray anymore. And yes, I know the irony of using black and white to describe a character who is literally black and white. The Reaper33 Killer writes, Hot take, FNAF needs a fighting game. Like, there's so many characters, and it's insane that a FNAF cart game was created before some sort of Smash Bros. Clone. Yes, I know it'd be difficult, but as a fan since the beginning, I find it incredible it hasn't been accomplished. FNAF Smash would be something I would die over. Yes, that's all I can really add here. Yes, I absolutely agree, and I don't know why it's not done often. There was one. It was good, but it was very basic. And if that could have been expanded, I could see that being really successful. Also, we need some actual FNAF posable figures. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I don't think the Funko ones are as bad as people make them out to be. They're not very posable though, because their limbs do come off very easily. I think the new Sun and Moon ones were very well made. I like the Scrap Baby ones. But I wouldn't mind seeing some better quality ones. Well, as long as they're not super expensive. Also, FNAF AR skins are too overhated. Y'all need to calm down. Yeah, I think when people complain about AR skins, they're not typically complaining about the good ones. They seem to be talking about the rampant trend of basically selling recolored merch. Plus, some of the skins are pretty rough. That being said, some of them are pretty nice as well. Love your content, and as I said before, I've been here since your original Twisted Ones rewrite. To a bright future, my friend. Thank you. You too. Andrew's Chaos Son writes, FNAF deserves more spin-offs. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to know about the next silly, goofy, wacky shenanigans the Mimic makes Papa Bear and Child Genius go through as much as the next guy. But come on, tell me you don't want to see Helpy beating the absolutely Walking Dead shiz out of Springtrap in a fighting game. Plus, these would be the best shot to give some characterization to characters that were done dirty, like Monty or the puppet. Yes, agreeing with this again. Akira Robinson writes, the FNAF movie wasn't that good. Like, the animatronics themselves were amazing, but the story was lackluster. It felt like they were trying to handle a lot of plot points at once without really fleshing them out. I was really disappointed, especially when it comes to the character writing, since I think that's the most important aspect when it comes to the story. I wish we would have gotten more times when it comes to the missing children, because they still just feel like plot devices. I wish we could have seen more of a relationship between Mike and his missing brother, so we can care on a personal level, so that we can contrast with the bond between Abby and Mike. Basically, I wish the characters were fleshed out. I also think the tone of the movie is inconsistent. Like, they want to please older fans that enjoy the more darker aspect of FNAF while drawing in a younger audience. I think it would have worked as a TV series where it starts off with only Mike and Abby and their relationship trying to stay as a family as they slowly introduce the missing children plotline. Something like an adult Gravity Falls. Also, why wasn't Mike's younger brother a part of the missing children? That sounds like that'll make more sense. I can go on, but I won't since it'll be an entire essay. Love your videos, and I hope I can get picked, and hope you see this. Thank you, and you were. So, yeah, okay, full disclosure, I haven't seen the entire movie. I've seen big chunks of it, but I haven't seen the entire movie. And, yeah, I can see where there might be too many plot lines added in, and it does feel like there were some parts that were kind of just shoved in. My point being that, yeah, I think that there could have been a little more focus on the characters. No movie is perfect. Okay, I'm gonna be completely honest. So the FNAF movie is like a better Silver Eyes. And I say that because the issues that I have seen from my blips of the movie are like issues that I saw with the Silver Eyes. I mean, it's better than the Silver Eyes, but it's the same writing issues that were in the Silver Eyes. Now, the real reason I picked up this comment wasn't actually about the movie. Well, yeah, it was about the movie, but it was also to discuss the Garrett situation. I did find it really weird that Garrett, spoiler, was not Golden Freddy. And because that seemed to make the most sense. She was hanging out with Golden Freddy. Abby was hanging out with Golden Freddy through most of the film. It would have made sense if that was her brother, yeah? But it's not. So that means one of two things. Either Garrett is the puppet, and the reason that they're holding back on this is so that we can have that be the through line in the next movie, because, like, what's bringing Mike along now? William's gone. He's gonna come back, obviously, but there's gotta be something else. Well, yeah, we have the brother plotline. We already had the sister plotline, here's the brother plotline. If Garrett does not come back as the puppet, I have no idea what even the point of introducing Garrett as a character even was. These are two characters who can be streamlined. If they're not the same character, then there's absolutely no reason the one exists and the other one's going to be someone who we're going to have to get explained a backstory on in the next movie. To be determined, writes, don't get me wrong, I love Sun, Moon, and Eclipse a ton, but Moon is way overused in all forms of media and has done practically nothing useful. As opposed to Mimic, or Vanessa, or Michael Afton. I'm not trying to make you an example here, but this is a sentiment I've seen spread around. A character is finally doing something, and people are very resistant against it, even though it seems like Moon is becoming a major antagonist. Like, we're finally getting a character getting some movement, and everyone's acting like it's his fault personally that Monty was cut from Bonnie Bowl. None of the characters will ever do anything useful if we complain anytime anyone starts making progress, because then we'll get a big overcorrection and have them replaced with someone else, someone who won't last either. That's why we're having this whole Vanny mimic thing. So, please, give the moon some time. Casteros writes, also, the idea that Moon is or was Vanny's partner, helper, puppet makes me furious about the fact that Vanessa and Vanny's parts were so cut and trimmed down. We could have gotten some cool scenes between them, like Burntrap threatening both of them. I think I might have missed a previous comment here and accidentally didn't save it. Oops. But, I agree. Like, that would have been such a cool dynamic. Team Rocket, but they're working for a much more deadly boss, and they have no choice but to do it. Vanessa's sour, Sun's sassy, and Burntrap's in control. That could be really cool. Alas, it didn't happen, but maybe it might be happening now. That's why we gotta see how this Moon thing plays out. Doomdog writes, Monty, my favorite security breach ruin animatronic besides Sun and Moon, is now the single most underrated and underutilized of all the FNAF animatronics. He is the first ever FNAF boss fight and he looks cool. Other than that, it's hit after hit for my boy. He is written to be just a lumbering brute with no personality. At least Chica got some more characterization and help wanted too. He has the most gruesome, in my opinion, shattering. Sure, he probably killed Bonnie, accidentally or not, but there are more sea Bonnies and regular Bonnies in the franchise. My heart broke as I saw him fall from a cool, lovable brute to a shrieking Indo who's too broken to think. These animatronics were built with emotions and thoughts. That was ripped from, both in universe and by Steelwool. I think the worst part is, he is probably going to be replaced by Bonnie. Roxanne will probably show up again, or a version of her, but I doubt we'll ever see Monty again, outside of a one-off nod or gag. Rest in literal pieces. Yeah, Monty kinda is the one that got left behind. In a way, the only thing that really was drawing people to Monty was the Glamrock Bonnie mystery. That comment earlier was correct. If there were going to be any answers on Glamrock Bonnie and Monty's situation, it would have happened in Help Wanted 2, and by all intents and purposes, it was cut for some reason. Here's the thing, this is just a thing I'm gonna throw out there. I think the amount of people who don't want to believe Monty murdered Bonnie kind of did Monty a disservice. Well, I mean, not them, obviously, but like, this whole obsession about the Glamrock Bonnie mystery gave reason for it to not be solved. You know, it becomes one of those great FNAF theories that doesn't ever get an answer. And because of that, it's just slowly pushed down the line, and but now we're just kind of getting left at the past. We're not gonna probably see Monty again. Now, we are finally on to my hot take. So, initially the plan was to address Monty again, since there's been consistently so many takes about Monty and Bonnie and Moon, but then I stumbled upon a hot take halfway through gathering them, and it brought me back to an idea I had long ago, and so I decided to switch at the last moment. And it all starts with one question. Mxes is the security system in the Pizzaplex made to haunt and contain the Mimic. It follows Cassie throughout Ruin trying to stop her, but being unable to before being sealed away in its box. Why is Mxes a rabbit? And I mean conceptually. Why is Mxes a rabbit? It doesn't look like Vanny, so it can't be to fit the Vanny system. It doesn't seem styled like Glitchtrap to try and maybe fool the Mimic. So why? Well, the answer is because the Mxes is a mislead. The reason Mxes is a rabbit, both his possible beta, horrifying garish form and his Gaston-inspired current design, is because like with Mimic pretending to be Gregory, this is a red herring pretending to be a villain, trying to make him seem more like the bad guy. He is the evil rabbit with the menacing grin who we have been taught to fear. I knew it was a lie the moment I saw him, obviously, but it was intriguing nonetheless. Jokes aside, yes, this mislead angle only works if you truly buy any of the nonsense Gregory is telling you. The second he's telling you to stop the security protocols, you know something's up. So Mxes being a rabbit is relatively pointless. And that's where this take comes in. Mxes shouldn't have been a rabbit. he should have been a puppet, and I will explain why. Firstly, the whole being confined and sealed in a box thing. Secondly, the puppet is a security-based animatronic. Allegedly, back in the 80s, it was advanced enough to hook up with a security bracelet and watch children. In FNAF 2, it is formatted with the rest of the toys to have facial recognition and the ability to track criminal databases. Not to mention the security puppet itself, featured in Pizzeria Simulator. So having the puppet be the symbol of security software actually fits. Thirdly, this retroactively gives meaning to why the staff bots look like the puppet. The staff and security bots are all working under the same network, a network that can be protected by the Mxes that takes the form of the puppet, and so does its many branches of staff bot drones. It even explains the chosen design of the Nightmarian bots, if the puppet Mxes is aware of the two depictions of its own design. Plus, suddenly all of those Nightmarian and puppet plushies and teasers mean something. And to go further, remember that theory that the puppet was controlling the Pizzaplex? Well, here you go. This is the only way it'll functionally make sense. And I know some of you folks love the books and the concept of the storyteller, an AI made to, in short terms, basically puppeteer the animatronics of the Pizzaplex. Bingo, the puppet Mxes fits both roles. Or the Marionette. Plus, look at the design we could have had. This is a picture drawn by my good friend Mapesall Girl, and he looks incredible. The smile is haunting and manic. The eyes resemble those of the staff bots it likely stares through, mixing in elements from its many depictions, such as through the arms and through the hat. It's creepy. It's so cool, and guess what? That design alone could lead us to the initial mislead with Mxes. This uncanny creature looks wicked, and it silently stalks us. We could easily believe it's the bad guy without the rabbit ears, and begin to believe that maybe a creature we saw as the good guy suddenly became the bad guy, only to have the rug pulled out and it to be revealed what the Marionette was actually made for. It would have been great! We want more Puppet, bring him back as a night guard. And you know what? This would answer against the biggest detraction I've seen about bringing the Puppet back. I see it a lot. Folks saying, well, Charlie's story is over. Charlie is no more. No more Charlie, no more Puppet. But okay, but also, we didn't stop getting Freddys when Classic Freddy was shelved. Glamrock Freddy and Classic Freddy are two very distinct characters. Same with Glamrock and Classic Chica, the various Foxies and Bonnies. Why is it that the puppet is the only character who has gotten shelved because of the soul that one model had moved on? That would be like if Five Nights at Freddy's couldn't have another Freddy or Chica ever again because of the happiest day. It's insane! You must agree, because who doesn't love Papa Bear? But this totally fixes that, because this is not Charlie. This is not our puppet. This is something else. Something that could be so very cool and actually give us one decent person working for the good side who isn't a child. I'm tired of coping and watching rabbit after rabbit after rabbit flop harder and harder with each swing. We hit strike 3 long ago. Let's get this batter off the plate and put that weapon into someone else's hands. So yeah, the Marionette would have made for an amazing Mxes. Alas, that did not happen, but it's never too late to get back on track. We gotta make like Matpat and seize the day, deem the carp, all that good stuff. And even though I want to believe that this will lead somewhere, I'm not getting my hopes up. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this hot take video. Thank you for watching. Also, Monty did it.